and how quickly weather changes in Vancouver as well. We have two great topics today to cover. So first of all, let me start with the DevOps. So DevOps is a combination of 5 elements: culture, automation, lean processes, measurements, and recovery. And we are lucky because 2 of our topics that we're going to talk today will be touching on almost every single one of them. We will talk about the QA, and as you know, over the last decade or even more, the way how we deliver products changed, and there is no more separate process or activities, but the QA became actually an integral part of the DevOps. And especially with automation and culture of agility, it became a fundamental element of DevOps. And the second one is a software chain of custody. This is not only about or is related to compliance, but also provides ability to measure the flow of delivery in order to improve how we deal with the value stream management. So I'm going to hand over to Alison to provide some of the housekeeping information and introduce our speakers. Alison, over to you.
Thanks, Andre. And welcome back to everyone, and welcome to anyone who's joining us for the first time. We had a long break over the hot summer, so we're back again monthly from now onwards. And my name's Alison Bennett, and I'm the co-organizer along with Andre. So this evening we've got 2 guest speakers, and I'll introduce the first speaker shortly. And then after each speaker, we'll have a Q&A session as well. But I think both speakers are kind of open to you asking questions throughout their presentation. So whatever you're comfortable with, or you could put the questions in the chat as well if you prefer that, and we'll try and facilitate those question and answer sessions afterwards. So as I said, 2 excellent guest speakers this evening. Our first speaker is Jason Su. So I'd like to welcome Jason. Jason is currently a people development manager and formerly a QA manager at WorkSafeBC. And Jason has worked in IT for over 20 years in organizations as varied as ICBC, Citibank, Ericsson, Avcorp Industries, and Fujitsu. And this evening, Jason is going to be talking about quality being everyone's responsibility. So I will hand over to you, Jason.
Thanks, Alison. Sure. Up. So let me know if you all see my title screen there.
Yes, we can.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So I'd like to start off with a quiz question. So this is going to be audience participation. So hopefully people have access to their chat. Maybe a question to the group, and you can throw your guess into the chat. Who did I steal the title of this presentation from? I didn't come up with this.
Me?
Quality is everyone's responsibility. Oh, there's somebody much older than whoever it is that said me.
Oh, that cannot be me.
Yeah, I think this person has passed away a long time ago. Who actually said it.
Deming.
Correct.
Hey.
Wow. Yes, very good. Yes, W. Edwards Deming. Quality is everyone's responsibility. Every single person in the delivery chain contributes to the overall quality of the end product or service. So I created this presentation with the everyone in mind. So it's not just developers or QA people, but everyone in and surrounding your team. And my goal is to provide a few easy to remember tips to build and retain your quality mindset, irrespective of which role you play. And like I said, it's going to be interactive. So hopefully people are faster on the keyboard. Oh, Jens is very fast on the keyboard there, I see. But maybe Alison, just so I'm not looking back and forth the whole time, maybe you can also help at some points when I ask for responses in the chat.
Sure.
So yeah, just thank you for the introduction, Alison. So I'm Jason Su, currently a people development manager at WorkSafe and formerly QA manager. And in that role as QA manager, I managed a roster of QA analysts in our enterprise delivery and operations department, mostly doing testing, which is a quality control activity. But today's talk is not about quality control, which is like finding defects, nor really about quality assurance, which is more like avoiding problems and guarantee of a standard, but actually just of quality in general. and the behaviors that support it. So although I originally drafted this while I was a QA manager, I think it's actually aligning well to my people development role because we're talking about behavior. So I'll move on. So let's try to get into the mindset which I'm trying to build here. So first of all, what is quality? So it's the first question to the group, or it's actually the second question to the group. Can you please put into the chat some examples of products or services which invoke the feeling of quality in your mind? Okay, yeah, maybe Alistair, you can read out some.
Yeah, Sony, iPhone, Toyota, Apple.
And you mean the quality in the positive sense? Or
Quality in a positive sense, yes.
Very bad.
Quality in a positive sense, positive.
Okay.
Yeah. Whirlpool, LG.
Nice. Okay, those are all good examples. So I also kind of just, you know, off the cuff, threw down a few things which I thought in my mind was quality. I've got Tesla here, Gulfstream Jet, the iPhone, Apple, I also agreed with. There's a Blundstone boot, in case you're a boot fan, very, very popular and very sturdy. I got a Rolex watch and an old bottle of wine, which kind of looks expensive, and I'm assuming it's quality. And then if you don't think you can afford any of that stuff, I put in a bottle of milk. This is Avalon, certified organic, company founded in 1906, local small volume production in a glass bottle. Excellent bottle of milk if you've ever tried it. So just on that same kind of getting our minds around this, what isn't quality? So yeah, to be specific, what is negative quality? I'd like to see some examples from your experience and your feeling on what that is. And you know what, if you don't have access to the chat or you can't type, you might as well just unmute and shout because your feedback is important.
Walmart.
Yeah.
Sangeeta didn't like Walmart. Transat, SolarWinds, Wish, Ford Pinto, Boeing Max, fast fashion, Sharp. People are coming up with bad quality a lot quicker than good quality.
That says something.
The thrift shops, Delta Airlines.
Okay, so those are all great suggestions. You know, I also kind of just off the cuff thought of a few things from my mind. You know, there's the Phoenix pay system. So if anybody in the audience is working in the federal government and you didn't get paid properly, you probably know what I'm talking about there. A little bit torn with the Suzuki Samurai here. It's actually, from what I heard, a good vehicle, but it had a reputation for rolling over in certain conditions. And so that gave that company a bad rep, and they had to discontinue that model in North America. Top right, Ashley Madison. You know, I'm sure that nobody here was affected by that, but some people were, you know, very famous and highly publicized data breach. And then if you look at the bottom left and the bottom right, you may have never seen these products before. And that's probably because they were complete flops, Watermelon Oreo and the HP touchpad, which HP tried to bring out to compete against the Apple iPad, and what was one of the most monumental product release flops of all time. And I know there's a lot of technical people in the audience, so Windows Vista, probably don't have to elaborate too much on that. You know, I tried to keep it a little bit lighthearted here. You know, I was avoiding other things like the Deepwater Horizon disaster, which was the largest marine oil spill in history in 2010. There's a subprime mortgage crisis, also known as the global financial crisis in 2008, which was 100% a man-made crisis. And then there was also this Chernobyl nuclear disaster that everybody knows about back in '86. So, you know, we're getting our heads around like what we think is quality, what we think isn't quality. So what about some definitions? So if we're going to try to describe what it was, I was avoiding using descriptive words before. What do you think are descriptive words that would describe this quality stuff that we were just looking at? And maybe I'll give you a few hints. Dependable is good. Yeah.
Reliable.
So keep it coming. I have a few words that I came up with myself. And if there's any other ideas, I mean, I by no means have a monopoly on the definition of quality. So if you have any other ideas, please add that.
Working as advertised and working as expected. Clarity. Performs well, consistent. Well prepared. Quality perception is changing over time.
Those are great. Those are all very great descriptions. So
Created
let's go to the actual
care.
Created with care. That sounds good. So let's look at the formal definition. Quality from the Oxford Dictionary. The standard of something as measured against other things of a similar kind, the degree of excellence of something. Or from ISO standard, quality is the totality of features and characteristics of a product or service that bears its ability to satisfy stated or implied needs. So we've looked at what we thought quality is in terms of examples. We looked at some of the definitions of it. And what's the good news here? The good news is that organizations, especially DevOps types organizations, we recognize that we all need to contribute to the quality of the products and services we provide. Our gentleman here, Edwards Deming, who came up with the title of this slide, he helped the Japanese industries in the late 40s and 50s with their quality management processes. Mazda, Sony, Toyota, etc. If you think of those guys back then, they used Deming's teachings to bring up their quality of their products. If you look at the top right, we also have SAFe, Scaled Agile Framework. I mean, they actually have built-in quality as one of their 4 core values. And then if you like Scaled Agile but you don't like SAFe, you might be one of the followers of Disciplined Agile Delivery. And I've taken below on the bottom right, Improve Quality. It's one of their 21 process goals. So we are all concerned about quality. Nobody wants to create faulty or unwanted products. But what do you do about it? And remember, back to the thesis, it's everybody's responsibility. So I'm not talking about the code review or anything like that. That's like one thing, right? How do you manifest this principle of quality is everyone's responsibility in your own work? How to keep this at the top of your mind? Or better yet, how to build quality into your mindset? So I came up with 8 kind of common sense tips to keep quality at top of mind. This is just from me thinking and from my experience. So getting into the first tip. So I'm dating myself a little bit here because this is a meme on Simpsons, and maybe some of the younger people don't even know what Simpsons is. Tip here is think big picture. So the background of this is this lady here, Helen Lovejoy, in the middle of a town hall meeting in Springfield. They'd be talking about some kind of serious topic. And she just blurted out, won't somebody please think of the children, irrespective of if it had anything to do with children. So this is a bit of a tongue-in-cheek example. I don't know if you find it funny because everybody's muted. I'm not saying sidetrack discussions in a wild and crazy way. But what I am saying is you want to think big picture and look at the risks or the issues or the dependencies outside of that area that you're working specifically. So beyond the borders of your desk. Some people think of this as, or talk about it as systems thinking, right? And the way I see it here is like, if everyone thinks a bit beyond their own desk, there won't be very many gaps formed between desks. So I'll move on to my second tip. So SOS is a Scrum of Scrums, inspect and adapt community of practice. So what do all of these have in common? Working together to solve systemic problems, capitalizing and maximizing the benefit of the feedback from each other. So I'm not saying that you only work together in these meetings and you're only giving feedback during these meetings. But what I'm saying is you can leverage these opportunities to derive the fullest potential to bring quality forward. So working together and capitalizing on feedback. So next tip. So we've taken a look at this gentleman here, an aspiring professional athlete training for some running type event, maybe it's the Olympics. So is this sprinter going to like run around the track each practice session and just hope he's getting faster? No, he's going to measure it. Measurement is a fundamental tenet in continuous improvement. And so I say define what your quality is, whatever is important, and measure it. And that will help you drive quality forward. And remember, back to the original thesis here, anyone can do this, with whichever output you are producing. So here we have actually two tips combined. There's a circle, you see these arrows going around and around. So I think that kind of gives away one of the tips, which is the iteration part. But my whole tip here is to transform intention into action and iterate. So in SAFE, we have the innovation and planning iteration. Some places they call it this +1 sprint. And you're supposed to be using this for sharpening the saw and continuous improvement. And other organizations, they may not be following that framework, but they may have some continuous improvement log or something similar to track things that they want to improve. So the point is actually to act on these ideas, right? And it could just be little tiny steps at a time, as long as you're iterating, right? That is the key. So take retrospectives, or if you're a follower of SAFE, the inspect and adapt ceremonies as examples. These are great ceremonies and opportunities to identify problems, but you actually have to work on the ideas that are generated there, right? And the good thing about retrospectives and inspect and adapt, it's embedded into the framework that, you know, these ceremonies iterate. So the iteration part is there by definition. So it really requires you to transform your intention to act. So I'll get back into the audience participation here because this is an easy one. Guess what this one's about? So you can shout out or you can throw something into the chat.
Sharing, user testing, instant feedback. Testing the
Yeah,
quality.
okay, whoever got sharing. Yeah, so not sharing ice cream, although sharing ice cream really helps with morale, but I'm talking about sharing your knowledge. So you share your knowledge, share your learnings, don't reinvent the wheel, reduce repeated mistakes. Your generosity with your knowledge, level up the entire team and drive quality forward. There's a saying which is like a rising tide raises all boats. So the broader you can share your knowledge, the better. And sometimes you have different platforms with which you can do that. Like in some areas like at WorkSafeBC, for example, we're developing a common engineering area, and that will also help with spreading knowledge. So any guesses on what this is?
Feedback, listening.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, listening to feedback.
Very, very close.
Feedback
Yes,
loop.
very, very close. Yep, those are all good guesses. I wanted to focus on listening to your customer. And when I say listen, I mean like really listen, because quality is in the eye of the beholder. And the beholder is whoever it is you are serving. So you may call them customer, you may call them client, end user, colleague, whatever name you want to put to that customer. The receivers of your output, they judge the quality of your output. So you want to listen to them, be open to their feedback, even if it means a vastly different perception that you have, right? Understanding your customer needs will both consciously and subconsciously drive your ideas and actions automatically in the direction of higher quality for them. So here, okay, it's an image of it's a couple of people standing in front of something that looks like a Kanban board, and then a complicated process diagram. And really, this is what I'm trying to get at with process. Master your processes. So processes are established at an organizational level, or it might be established at a team level. You may inherit legacy processes. They might be dysfunctional, or maybe they are not sufficiently focused on business value, Or maybe, as I just mentioned before about customer, maybe these processes don't really serve a customer, really. So then you have to fix these processes, right? New processes may not be understood by all the people that need to understand it. So let's be aware that you need to have stable processes that are understood by all in order to work and collaborate efficiently. So once you have those well-designed and well-understood processes, you're going to create stable output, and that is going to help increase your quality. So here's, it's my last tip now, running out of time. So any guesses to what this is? This is also the hardest one.
Measure, perception, reflection, retrospect, follow your shadow.
Okay, so those are all kind of close, but not really close. I was trying to get at be humble, right? The key here is the size of that shadow. So recognize what works, admit what isn't working. You may be the best at something, but it doesn't mean you never make mistakes. It's great to be confident, but not to the level of arrogance or ignoring feedback. And a sub tip to this is expose yourself to peer review. Anyone can take advantage of this for their outputs or deliverable, whatever that deliverable is. I'm not talking about code review again. So as an example, as a manager, when I provide direction to staff, sometimes I stop myself and ask like, hey, what do you think about this decision, right? Because you'd be surprised at people's feedback. And sometimes somebody far junior than you might come up with something which, some feedback, which is going to give you cause for thought and maybe gives you cause for further reflection on what you're trying to do. So those are the tips. To summarize again, think big picture, see the risk beyond the borders of your desk, work together to solve systemic problems, capitalize on feedback, define what your quality is and measure it, transform intention to action and iterate, share your knowledge, listen to your customer, master your processes, and be humble, admit what isn't working, and encourage peer review. So I would like to actually put it back to the group here, because you are all the masters of your own domain, and some of you developers, some are BAs, product owners, you have different roles. You know, I would really like to hear some examples of things or actions you've done in your daily work that helps to maintain or improve quality. And it could be a very, very small thing. Don't be shy. The idea is to share, and I think then the rest of the audience can actually get a little bit of insight from that. Alternatively, if you can't think of anything that you have done, but you can think of things that you could or should do in your organization to improve quality, you can also throw down some tips into the chat. So that is actually the end of the formal part of the presentation. So, you know, I think you can either put your ideas into the chat, or you can also unmute, and we can use this time or whatever remainder of the time we have left that Andre and Allison are giving us to have that open conversation and to have some sharing on this whole what we've done to improve quality or what we'd like to do. And also we can handle any other comments or questions you might have. Yeah, I'm also contactable over LinkedIn or through our DevOps group meetup. If you do reach out to me, please you remind me how I know you, because I do sometimes get some spam, especially through LinkedIn. So yeah, good to know who you are. All right, so maybe we can open it up. If there's any time left, Allison, you can let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's open things up for questions and comments and some feedback for Jason, and please feel free to unmute and talk to Jason directly, or pop it in the chat if you'd prefer.
So I've got a question, while others might be thinking about different questions, but this one is a little bit controversial, and you know, I'm sort of pushing envelope here. But as you know, in DevOps and in Agile, there's this concept of technical debt. How an European technical debt relates to quality, and is there a need for redefinition of ISO definition of quality?
Oh, right. Let's go back up to the definition of the quality there. The totality of features and characteristics of a product or service that bears its ability to satisfy stated or implied needs. So Andre, are you speaking to that quality from the ISO perspective is more speaking about an end product, whereas when you're talking about technical debt, we're talking about one aspect of a product which is going through a journey and a life cycle.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, what I really refer to is a lot of, and that's why I'm saying it's controversial, because a lot of teams or many teams consider technical debt as, okay, you know, we've got several bugs, but these are technical debt, so we're going to fix them later. So what's your take on that, on that type of thinking? Is this, you know, what I'm looking really is, what's, in your opinion, is the relationship between technical debt and the quality? Because you're not getting, right, with the technical debt, you're not getting the full product.
Yeah. And I think that goes back again to the listen to your customer and know your customer. There's different ways to evaluate that technical debt and to see how much it's really impacting the end customer and when it will impact them. Oh, I think there's somebody. And when it will impact that end customer. Because structurally, there may be things you need to correct, but your end customer won't necessarily see that problem for maybe 1 or 2 PIs later. So it wouldn't be necessary, and it wouldn't really affect quality to solve that later. But as soon as that technical debt is affecting your customer, as they use your product and they start experiencing some deficiencies, then I believe that it is affecting your quality and it should be addressed earlier rather than later.
Right. So one of the things that, you know, what I'm thinking of, and where a lot of teams or a lot of people maybe misunderstand what the quality is, delivering of the partial value does not mean that we compromise quality ever, right? That, I think that's a very strong statement that you made at the beginning. Quality is everybody's responsibility at any given point. Quality does not mean sloppy delivery, because crappy code is crappy code. Whatever you would do, even if it doesn't deliver the whole functionality. So I think, in my opinion, the quality can never be compromised. You might be delivering in the smaller iterations, and there's a partial business value that the user is getting, but it doesn't mean that the quality is compromised.
Yeah, and I would use the example as well of the iPhone and Apple, which people gave as examples of high quality, right? There's tons of bugs in there, but we don't necessarily perceive them as problems because it's a you know, Apple monitors how many people are actually affected by these bugs, and then they make decisions based on priority of what to fix and what not to fix, and they are constantly updating, right? And so it's a moving target. So I agree with what you say. The ISO definition speaks of the totality. And it does kind of talk about, and it seems like we're talking about an end goal, like when you're building a plane and you can only build a plane once every 2 decades, right? In the software world, it's much more dynamic, and you make those decisions more on a more frequent basis.
I think, just following up on the theme of the micro versus the macro level, sometimes the technical debt discussions, I think, focus too much on the micro. They focus on code smells, those kind of things, which are low quality, but to Andre's point, may not impact the overall system and its ability to deliver on the needs of the users. And to me, the technical debt that's much more concerning is when it is architectural in nature, that'll prevent you from over the longer term addressing system needs. And so if we think about quality as opposed to technical debt, and we think about the quality of the system as opposed to the quality necessary of the smallest element of the system, I think that's a more meaningful element when we talk about technical debt versus quality.
Good point.
Thanks, Jens.
There's also a comment from Ju, Jason. Technical debt is okay if it's managed. Sometimes speed to market is more important than carrying technical debt.
Yeah. So I'm not exactly sure how much time we actually still have left, but my recommendation is, you know, because my whole point here was to try to that drive people to have quality at the top of their mind. And I asked for examples of things that they've done, and very few examples came up, right? So I would give this as homework to people to think about, like, just these 8 tips. You've done something like that, like in your work, right? Maybe you have something to do with, you've shared your knowledge, for example, in some case. So think about what you've done in your work and celebrate the fact that you have, made a move towards higher quality, and then think about those things which you should or could do. And back to that one tip about transform intention into action. I strongly recommend everyone just take this as a homework, think about it, because next time somebody asks you this question, it should be the top of your mind. Quality is everyone's responsibility.
It's a good point. Thank you very much. And as a matter of fact, I can give you an example. Checking email for grammars and spelling mistakes before you send them.
That's a good one. You mean that's something that you've done, Andre?
That's what I'm doing every day.
Yeah, very good. And like, that's a very good example, because it does not matter if it is big or small, as long as we're iterating and keeping it up.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Jason. I think on that note, we'll thank you. And that was a fun presentation. Thank you very much, Jason.
You're welcome.
And
Thanks,
I know
Jason.
Jason is more than, oh, sorry, Anthony, did you have a final question?
Oh, no, I was just saying thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Andy.
And I know Jason, as he said, is more than happy to connect with people after the event, or if you'd like a copy of Jason's presentations, just reach out to me and we can certainly send that off to you. So thanks again, Jason. Okay, so next up this evening, I'd like to welcome Rick Brooker. Rick is currently a solutions architect at Digital.ai. In this role, Rick provides thought leadership to organizations wanting to take agile development to the next logical level by automating their deployment pipelines. Rick has a background in development and operations and is uniquely qualified to provide architectural guidance to organizations. And this evening, Rick will be talking to us about software chain of custody. So I'd like to welcome Rick.
You're on mute, Rick, if you are speaking.
Yeah, there we go. So hopefully I switched that over cleanly and you guys can see my screen now.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
And thank you for inviting me today to talk to you. And, as you get a little bit of background about me, solutions architect with Digital.ai. It's my email address if you want to reach out to me later. And a little bit about Digital.ai to kind of get us started here. So Digital.ai is an industry-leading technology company dedicated to helping primarily global 5,000 enterprises achieve digital transformation goals. We're using value stream management at its cornerstone. Digital.ai combines innovative technologies in agile planning, application protection, software delivery, artificial intelligence, and into a unified value stream platform. So Digital.ai makes it possible to connect all these software development and delivery efforts into strategic business outcomes and create a secure digital experience for customers to trust. So today it's widely accepted that every business is a software business, which means that every large enterprise that builds, buys, runs software, from leading retailers to financial service providers to insurance companies and more, must be concerned with the integrity of the software assets. Software asset integrity is everyone's responsibility, from C-level executives to product owners, release managers, auditors, DevOps team members. All stakeholders need visibility into planning, design, build, testing, release, and monitoring processes so they can prove that the software running in their environments is truly what it claims to be. It's the right version. It contains the code it should. It uses secure and approved libraries, and it hasn't been compromised by any viruses or malware. Software asset integrity is inextricably linked to the credibility of your corporate brand because the consequences of operating low integrity software are severe. Compromised applications can lead to lost business income, operational shutdown, breach of contract. Data storage that is not properly secured is vulnerable to breaches that expose sensitive information. And we just kind of talked about some of those things in the previous presentation. Some government regulations, such as in the United States, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, can even carry the penalty of prison time for organizational leaders. Organizational leaders and DevOps teams struggle to identify and mitigate risks that endanger the integrity of their software assets because the work required to do so is time-consuming, largely manual, and prone to errors. Executives, VPs, and directors don't have the ability to be sure that security and compliance needs are met. Product owners and DevOps team leads must figure out how to satisfy audit compliance requirements that threaten to slow down their teams. Software engineers spend time collecting raw data from technical tools and delivering it for audit reports instead of building value-added features. And security, audit, and compliance groups are stuck going back and forth between teams trying to get the information they need. The concept of a tool chain of custody originated in the legal world, where it describes the way a piece of evidence for a legal case is handled, transferred, stored, and analyzed. Today, many industries have adopted the concept to describe the way that processes and people who are involved in them should be tracked and documented. For example, in logistics, the chain of custody represents the path that a product takes from the start of the supply chain to the point where the consumer can buy it. In food production, the chain of custody represents the path that a food product takes from the raw ingredients to the final package on the grocery store shelf. The chain of custody concept can also be applied to software assets in your organization. Just as a chain of custody ensures the integrity of a product or piece of evidence, the software chain of custody proves that what happened, when it happened, where it happened, and who made it happen during the software delivery process, from the time you set business goals and plan features, all the way through development, testing, deployment, and monitoring of live software in production. A software chain of custody that truly covers the enterprise scale software delivery process starts with the strategic goals that you want to achieve. Most organizations execute a pipeline of business activities similar to the one here, where determining which software assets to invest in, how to measure the return on investment. Inputs into and outputs of this process are usually scattered in many places. Organizational leaders have ideas in mind and sketch out vision statements and goals on whiteboards. Product managers build roadmaps in PowerPoint. Release managers create plans and schedules in Excel. And product owners add work items to backlog in Jira. A software chain of custody can transform this disconnected set of inputs and outputs into a structured, connected, traceable chain of decisions, activities, and outcomes. DevOps teams manage and execute the activities that move software assets through the development and delivery process, writing new code, integrating it with the code base, testing it, packaging it into applications, deploying those applications to both pre-production and production environments, and monitoring each application's availability, stability, and performance. These activities require a variety of tools that support source code management, continuous integration, build capabilities, environment provisioning, application deployment, log aggregation, and performance monitoring. The landscape of varied and often disconnected tools make it inherently challenging to create a software chain of custody that reliably tracks the work that is being done and that captures and documents which person or processes triggered the work. To establish a software chain of custody for technical software delivery processes, you must automate the process of capturing and correlating the evidence for delivery activities across all the tools in your DevOps landscape. Implementing this type of automation and then optimizing it for enterprise scale uses requires tools and mechanisms that are built for repetition at scale. A software chain of custody process that is highly repeatable ensures that audit evidence is captured for every release. This process must scale to capture evidence automatically for every change made to every software asset, no matter how many tools are involved or how complex the technical delivery pipeline is. Value stream management is an emerging discipline that tracks software delivery activities and provides the contextual data enterprises need to analyze and continuously improve their software delivery process. A software chain of custody provides the foundation for value stream management because, in addition to proving the integrity of software assets, it paints a complete picture each and every software release from beginning to end. In many enterprises, DevOps leaders use strategic goals to build a roadmap that guides decisions about the future of software assets, which assets to build, which assets to change, and even which assets to retire. Product managers break the roadmap down into portfolio items, grouped by strategic theme that in turn goes into actionable items. Then product owners create a backlog of user stories and changes so teams can plan and estimate their day-to-day workload and delivery timeline. Many enterprises work this way, but they lack a rich end-to-end chain that would help leaders understand whether the technical changes that are being implemented actually support the company's strategic goals, especially when the software delivery process happens in long-running, complicated delivery pipelines that span many applications or teams. Value stream management that's built on top of a software chain of custody provides a crucial data and insight needed to identify opportunities for automation, reduce release delays, eliminate process bottlenecks, and ultimately help teams push changes to production faster. Capturing audit evidence in a scalable, repeatable software chain of custody is only one piece of the governance puzzle for technical software delivery processes. There are other impactful changes you can make to ensure that the life cycle of your software assets is properly controlled, governed, and documented without burdening the DevOps teams with cumbersome checklists, sign-offs, or other manual work that slows down software delivery processes. Many organizations require teams to provide input for audit reports and perform other compliance-related tasks that are based on outdated or poorly understood requirements, or that can be better satisfied by applying modern automation techniques. Simplifying and streamlining the compliance framework helps DevOps teams better understand what is required of them so they can more quickly implement automated controls that ensure software delivery pipelines are compliant by default. Shifting security and compliance validations left means executing them as early as possible in the software development process, typically by implementing them in the automated test phase. There are many open source and commercial tools available that support automated security and compliance testing, such as Chef Inspect, SonarQube, Black Duck, Checkmark, SAST, Fortify, Static Code Analyzer, to name a few. Continuous verification of the activities in the software delivery process helps ensure that all software assets go through the tests and checks that are required to ensure their quality and security. The results of those governance checks help ensure that the integrity of software assets as they move through the development, build, test, and deployment process, even when the process includes many different tools and people. In addition to the technical software delivery pipeline, there is a pipeline of governance activities that are required to prove that the work that is done in the technical pipeline satisfies industry and regulatory requirements. It is crucial that governance data is automatically collected and stored throughout the software delivery process, because that data is the input required for reports and metrics that support the software chain of custody. Governance data is also useful as a resource for DevOps teams that want to continuously improve their technical pipelines by automating time-consuming manual tasks, identifying and reducing rework, and locating and eliminating bottlenecks. Digital.ai powers the total software chain of custody by integrating with tools throughout the DevOps tool landscape, orchestrating the technical software delivery process, and automatically collecting relevant data from beginning to end of the process. Digital.ai is an industry-leading release orchestration capabilities allow DevOps teams and engineering leaders to make continuous security and compliance testing a native part of the software delivery process. As an end-to-end DevOps toolchain orchestration and reporting platform, Digital.ai is in a unique position to capture data across all the tools, provide context for release activities, and tell the story of exactly what happened in each release. Digital.ai value stream platform doesn't just trigger tests and verification checks in other tools, it also harvests the most relevant data from those tools and automatically builds an easy to understand picture of each and every software release. Digital.ai combines portfolio and backlog planning information from agile management tools with the technical data from build, test, deployment, and monitoring tools to create a context-rich software chain of custody that benefits technical and business stakeholders alike. Thank you. And if you're interested in learning more about, some of the products that Digital.ai has, our value stream management platform, or any of the other tools in our portfolio, can hit up Jason here, and he'll be glad to get you to the right people, maybe even talk to me for a demo if you're interested in that. So that's what I wanted to talk to you guys today about, the chain of custody. If there's any questions, fire at me.
Thank you, Rick. So a question from my side. I love that periodic table that you guys have. I've seen it in the past. It's interactive, and as a matter of fact, I think I will post the link to that because it contains really tons of information about the tools that are currently available. Are you integrating with all of these tools?
Yeah, so the periodic table of DevOps tools, we make a point of, it changes all the time, so that I could be wrong about this, but generally try to integrate with all those tools.
Wow, that's really impressive.
And even in the platform that we have, the thing that I kind of had this slide here, we have a number of different things. I didn't want to get into too much detail, but there's the agility piece that is the kind of safe agile planning tool. So all the kind of things that you would find in the safe agile planning, they're actually implemented in software and agility. Releases the release orchestration piece that kind of allows you to interact with most of the things that you see in the DevOps periodic table of DevOps tools, although we also do some of that with deploy as it relates to deploying things to like Kubernetes and stuff like that in AWS and Google Cloud Platform. And then we have a couple other things that are kind of neat. We have a continuous testing piece, which allows you to do mobile testing with actual physical devices in a data center. And the application protection is a thing that protects your application. So for example, it's strange to me when we first started doing this, I thought it would be banking applications, but really it's game applications. So some of the biggest companies we have are that, or your online gaming things, things that come out from like Microsoft or something like that. And so and then we have this analytics layer that goes on top that sucks all the data from all those things, as well as a lot of the other DevOps tools into it, so you can analyze that and do predictive analysis and so forth.
Okay, so that's where your AI comes into picture?
Yes, it is.
Oh, excellent. Any questions from the audience?
And there's one in the chat, Andre.
Mm-hmm.
This was from Rick. This was from Erkan, I think it's pronounced. Could you please help me to understand the mappings of the periodic table of DevOps tools as mentioned in the slide for the software chain?
So a lot of these tools, when you're running through deploying stuff, I'm going to want to know, when I deploy something to a Kubernetes cluster, I want to get some information back that I deployed my artifact there, that I actually ran it. If I don't know if I have on here, but for example, ServiceNow, you want to make sure you created the tickets and so forth. If I'm calling Jenkins, I want to know that I built the artifacts and what artifacts I built, which artifacts were actually deployed to different environments. So our platform allows you to collect all that information, and even to the extent that you have things that are being done manually by people, is collect that information so that we have the complete story then of everything that happened during the release of that, from the kind of the planning phase all the way through to monitoring, and so you now have something that you can give to auditors and say, okay, so I can tell you for sure what happened from this feature that we planned on building and when it actually went to production. It also gives companies some other insight into how long does it take to get a feature to production? How long, did we see any revenue change as a result of that?
Yeah, that's definitely very, very interesting. It seems to be that you actually combine both. From one side, you've got the compliance and security. From the other side as well, you take into account the optimization of the flow.
Yeah. And because you have all this information now, you can see, we're talking about chain of custody here, but you can see how you can use that same information to build metrics to decide how you are doing as far as release orchestration. One of the things that we tout a lot in our analytics piece is just the straight up DORA metrics, because while that's a fairly common and sort of new standard for kind of determining your efficiency of your DevOps process, it's kind of tricky to get that information a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned you are able to monitor the entire process from the very beginning, including the requirements, I presume. So even the changes in the requirements are also captured, and you can always track what's happened over there? Yeah,
if you think about in the agile planning thing, we implement all the sort of ceremonies that you would find in SAFe, right? Mm-hmm. And we do that in our agility product. And so you can have all those things, and as you're doing it, you're collecting the information about the planning. You're documented in there. It's just all the cards and so forth that they kind of talk about doing it manually. It's stored in the software, so you can then use that information in your chain of custody. So you can go from initial ideation all the way through to final product.
Mm-hmm. Well, I see a huge benefit because actually today, in my organization, we've got obviously internal audit as well. So they, periodically just check, what type of processes we have and so on and so on. And they've got a full list of things that they're going to check and verify, and they want to see, a lot of this stuff. It's really a great idea to have everything in one place. I mean, as a matter of fact, you can tell them, don't talk to me, just go there and look at the tool and reports from the tool.
Oh, it's massively empowering. And actually, we have a couple auditing companies that have said that they will just take our chain of custody reports, and that's it. That's all they need.
This is what I thought, right? The other question from my side would be, one of the big things in the value stream management is to identify obviously those bottlenecks or the wait times where we're spending a lot of time. And in many cases, we see this with, for example, security reviews. So before the code can move from one environment to another or going to production, they need to, review the code. And despite it, we've got a like automated tests like SonarQube and others, but they still want to do, those steps. I'm wondering if you have any examples or you can provide some more information about organizations that actually implemented that where the security actually is minimal, is the touch is minimal because they have all the information in that value stream and reporting.
Yeah. So I mean, I can it's another example from stealing from our previous presenter here, but Toyota is an example. They're a customer of ours, and they have implemented what they call the 5 gears of DevOps, right? And the idea is if you're I forget which order, I think if you're in gear 5, it's an entirely manual process. So you will be going through a manual code review, right? And a manual cab sessions and so forth. Or maybe it's gear 1. I think it's gear 1. If you're in gear 5, you're full speed ahead. So nobody touches it. You commit code and it goes to production.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's because every step along the way is automated. So obviously there's a few other gears between that, but what happens is, as you can automate things, you can start to speed things up, and you can start to kind of control that. And another strategy I run into, and I can't think of an example right off the top of my head. A company does this, but some of these code reviews, if you say you have 3 or 4 environments that you have to go through and you do different things to, you may know earlier that you need to do this security scan of something, but it takes a long time to do. And you can actually do that as a parallel effort while you're doing the rest of the stuff. So even though it takes maybe a couple days to do it, but you have a couple days of other work that you need to do before you get to production anyways. So let those guys go do that. And then you just have to wait at the end to make sure their work is done before you make the final move to production.
Great, thank you. I think Anthony got a question. Anthony, you go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Rick, for sharing this information. I had a question about the Digital.ai platform. Does it also go beyond just monitoring the flow, and does it also help with automating the flow? I may have heard the answer, but I just wanted to confirm.
So it literally, one of the primary things is actually automating the flow. So, when we go back and we look at the platform here, I get this. So let me see if I can get my pencil here. Pen color, go with red. So these two pieces here are going to automate the flow. So the release is a release orchestration piece, and that ties a bunch of other tools together. So that'd be where you call off to maybe like the continuous testing thing to do the testing, or maybe you would ask it to run a scan, maybe you do a build or something like that. And the deploy is automatically just more like moving the bits around. You got to push some bits into EKS or something like that. You can do that.
Would you be able to automate handoffs, like from team to team, or
yeah. So one of the things that is kind of tricky and interesting about release is generally when we sit down to talk to somebody, if you think about the way you release software, there's a lot of teams involved in it, right? Obviously there's some developers, there's some QA people, maybe some business people that are involved. And so you're talking about different parts of the organization, but in the concept of releasing software, there's a lot of different people that touch it in different ways. And I can model all that in release. And so that's where you can have these handoffs between different people. And it's not uncommon for us to see sort of a dev and QA focus at the beginning of a release pipeline, and more of an operations and change management focus at the end of a pipeline. Because as we move from development and QA and maybe user acceptance testing to production, you're sort of changing teams, right?
That's right. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
Actually, just one other question. In terms of taking on a tool like this to automate and to monitor flow, what kind of preparation would an organization go through in order to make the best use of a tool like this?
So, and to be clear, it's about like 5 pillars of stuff here. So, like if we're talking about the release automation and deployment automation, our sort of go-to-market sort of strategy here is we do POCs with people. I mean, because of COVID, we've been doing those more remote than we do in person. But the idea here with releases, we can get you a copy of the software and start talking about how you release the software and start modeling out how that looks. And during the process of doing that, kind of think about like how you might want to be better, right? A lot of people, they have these sort of disjointed sort of processes for their releases now because you have different teams and people in the organizations doing it. If we can put them together and model that transition and release, it makes it easier for us to collect all the information for that chain of custody report. And that's really an important thing we want to get to, right? We want to know what that whole chain of custody is. We want to be able to prove to people that, we started at one point and we ended up delivered in production. We know exactly what we delivered.
Question. So the value stream is usually in organization pretty long and complicated, and obviously there is a lot of legacy processes still, and so on and so on. If you would be starting with a company, where you guys usually advise to start? I'm just looking, for example, in this particular value stream, where are those areas where you would advise, okay, start with this first and then move and expand to other areas?
I mean, I usually suggest you either start with the, agile planning stuff or the release automation stuff, the release part, because those are the 2 places where you can get, I think, the biggest bang for the buck. A lot of the application protecting and continuous testing are, and especially testing, are very important, but the planning part and the release part are important. And then we also have some sort of smaller add-ons that you can put on top of release and agility to kind of pull in some other data to get some of that, not really the AI analytics, but kind of right before the AI analytics that provide a lot of stuff. Even the DORA metrics is in that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Jason, I think your hand's up.
Yeah, I was, just on that topic of legacy systems, I was just wondering how well does this software chain of custody automation work if you're dealing with a hybrid network, where you have legacy components and on-prem and manual processes? Like, does it kind of break down, or is there ways to kind of keep it relatively automated?
So when you're talking about legacy, you're thinking like between on-prem, your own data center, and the cloud then?
Yeah, for example, like a hybrid network where you have, let's say your databases are all on-prem and all of the maintenance work on that is, maybe there's a lot of manual processes involved with that when you're pushing stuff out to production.
Yeah, so right now, both release and deploy, for example, work with both on-prem and cloud stuff, right? So we were around before the cloud was the new hotness, so we had a pretty hefty footprint on-prem sorts of things, and more sort of traditional type of deployments, and we've just been adding functionality on top of that to deal with cloud stuff. And it's interesting because when everybody started talking about going to the cloud, it's like, oh, it's going to be so much easier, it's so much simpler, but I actually think it's much more complicated.
Right.
There's more,
but also the manual processes. There's way to kind of keep track of who's doing what.
Yep. Release is really good about keeping track of manual processes. So I mean, manual process is just another task in release. I mean, the downside of it is you're waiting for a human to do something, but the cool part is you actually have it documented as which human did it, when they did it. They can attach assets to it to say what they did or put comments in and so forth. And I've actually had a number of customers that have decided to replace their sort of change management ticketing system with just using release. Think about what you put into a change management request to release some software into production, it's basically the steps of things that you want to do that. I know I used to work for a large Midwestern bank, and one of the things that used to frustrate me is we would have a meeting on Tuesday where we had this CAB meeting. We would review all the changes that we're going to do on the weekend, and we work out a procedure. We put it in an Excel spreadsheet, put that Excel spreadsheet on SharePoint, put a link into ServiceNow, and we'd approve the change request, and it would move on. We'd be scheduled. We're going to do it this weekend. Friday afternoon at about 4:30, 5 o'clock, I'd get an email with an updated spreadsheet. So now I'm sitting here going, like, do I do the new spreadsheet or do the old spreadsheet? If I do the new spreadsheet, it wasn't approved by the change management board, so I'm going to get fired. If I do the old spreadsheet, it was updated with the new spreadsheet, so it wasn't doing exactly what I was supposed, what everybody said was the best way to deploy stuff. So I'm going to get fired. So I thought, I'm in trouble here.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah. Whereas at least now with release, if someone decided to change that release process, there would be an audit log if we did that. It's part of the chain of custody now.
Makes sense.
So it'll be somebody else who gets fired, not me.
Pressure's off.
Yeah, but sometimes those changes are necessary and they make sense. It's just you don't always know what they need to be.
Of course. It goes back to the principles of agility and Agile Manifesto, right? Reduce the number of documentation and steps that are unnecessary.
Yeah.
Just, if you got the steps that you need to do in production, just document those instead of creating another spreadsheet. So you're absolutely right.
Well, and one of the things that's cool about release is you literally are documenting what you need to do to release the software. And to the extent that you have integrations that automate that for you, it just happens. And to the extent that you have something you have to do manually, you got to do it. And we know that it was done.
Yeah, thank you. Do we have any other questions?
For Rick or for Jason, for that matter?
For anybody? Okay, doesn't look like we have. So let's wrap up.
Yeah, let's wrap up. But thank you again, Jason and Rick. Great presentations, and thank you for the discussion afterwards as well. Really appreciate you both joining us this evening. Andre, any final words from you?
Yes, so again, many thanks, Jason and Rick, for great presentations, and thank you everybody else who joined us today. As always, if you have any topic that you would like to discuss or you'd like to present or showcase your company and you're passionate about DevOps and the stuff that we do, please do not hesitate to contact Alison or myself, and we schedule you for one of the next meetups. Thank you very much then, and yeah, have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andre. Thanks, Alison.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.